Hey friends, there have been some changes on the seller's contingency form, the SPRP form, the seller's purchase of replacement property. This addendum has been really popular since many sellers have sold their properties to buy a replacement home. However, this is one of the most misunderstood forms real estate agents use. And I have the feeling it's because maybe you never sat down for a minute and try to understand how the form really works. So I'm going to give you a quick sort of crash course before I tell you what's on the December 2023 version of the SPRP form. Now, I guarantee that if you get a grip of what I'm just about to go over, you will have a better understanding of how the form works. So don't let anything distract you in the next minute. Let's break down the SPRP form into three parts: the contingencies, the time periods, and cancellation rights. Now, regarding contingencies, keep in mind there are two contingencies, not one: the finding replacement property contingency and the close of replacement property contingency. By default, unless noted otherwise, the seller has 17 days to find the replacement property, and the contingency to close on the replacement property lasts all the way until the scheduled close of escrow date for the replacement property. Now be careful, in order for the contingency to close on the replacement property to be in effect, you must check the box in paragraph 1C. If you do not check the box, you better hope your seller has a place to stay if they are not able to close on the replacement property. Second part of the SPRP form is the time periods. And this is where many agents lack understanding. By default, time periods for the property that seller is selling do not begin until seller has found a replacement property. Unless seller has indicated on the SPRP form that they already have a replacement property, then the time periods begin as usual. An easy way to remember is if the seller has checked that they already have a replacement property, then the time periods begin as normal. If seller does not have a replacement property, then buyer's time periods do not begin until the seller has removed replacement property contingency. Now, there may be situations where the seller may want the buyer's time periods to start even though the seller has not found a property. This may make the seller's offers on potential replacement property stronger. In order for the buyer's time periods to begin in this situation, you'll need to check the box in paragraph 2A of the SPRP. Or, if the seller will be satisfied with only the buyer's deposit to be held in escrow, then you just need to check the box in 2B. The last part is cancellation rights. If seller does not remove any of the two contingencies by the time they're up, buyer may cancel agreement by first issuing a notice to seller to perform. Now that I gave you a quick summary of the SPRP form, the new verbiage that has been added to the SPRP form should now make more sense to you. Let's take a look. Regarding the seller finding replacement property contingency, the revised SPRP now requires the seller to provide evidence of the replacement property to the buyer. That can be the purchase contract with escrow information, a signed rental agreement, or other written evidence. For example, maybe they're moving in with a family member. Now, the reasoning behind this is that the buyer may be suspicious of seller not really having a replacement property when seller removes this particular contingency, therefore causing delays and possibly even having to worry about removing the seller out of the property later on. And why would the seller even lie about having a replacement property in the first place? Well, they may want to have the buyer to start removing their contingencies to lock them in to the transaction to make sure buyers don't go anywhere while the seller is still looking for a property. Just recently, I've seen it happen where the sellers did in fact find the replacement property, but then it canceled and they never notified the buyer. And same thing, sellers kept this a secret so their buyers don't cancel on them. However, when buyers do find out, well, they start getting the feeling that maybe buying the seller's house is taking way longer than expected, causing more expenses for the buyer, such as losing their interest rate lock, getting a new homeowner's insurance because their first quote expired, etc. So we now have a new paragraph 3 on the SPRP that requires the seller to notify the buyer in writing if the seller's replacement property falls through. Seller has 2 days from the date of cancellation of seller's replacement property to notify the buyer. So this can no longer remain a secret to the buyer. So, with that said, buyer now has 2 new grounds to cancel the contract. As you can see in 5B, if seller fails to provide evidence of replacement property, and on 5D, if seller provides notice that their replacement property has fell through. All right, stay tuned next week as I cover what has changed on the listing agreement. I'll see you on the next one.